Your dog knows the sound of your car. It knows before you've even turned onto the street. It remembers your face after a year apart. It grieves when you're gone too long. We call that a bond, something only dogs and humans get to have. But a few miles away, there's an animal doing almost everything your dog just did. And by dinner time, it's on a plate. A psychologist has an actual name for the trick that makes that possible. It's got nothing to do with taste. Let's start with a pig named Hamlet and a joystick. In the 1990s, a researcher at Penn State named Stanley Curtis wanted to know how smart pigs actually were. So he built them a video game. Literally, a joystick, a screen, a cursor, and a food reward waiting at the end of it. They named the pig Hamlet, of all things, which is either a very good joke or a complete accident. Nobody bothered to write down which. The pigs figured out how to move the cursor with their snouts almost as fast as young chimpanzees did on the same test. Curtis, by most accounts, was genuinely stunned. Nobody expects a farm animal to outlearn a primate. And yet, here we were, watching a pig play video games better than some distracted toddlers. And that wasn't a fluke. A 2015 review by comparative psychologists Lori Marino and Christina Colvin pulled together decades of pig research. And the list is honestly kind of absurd. Pigs remember specific locations for years. They learn by quietly watching each other succeed or fail. They can be briefly fooled by a mirror the same way a 2-year-old is. And they show something that looks a lot like emotional contagion, where one stressed pig can visibly unsettle an entire group around it. So here's a myth that needs correcting. First, pigs rolling in mud isn't filth, it's thermoregulation. They can't sweat through their skin, so mud is basically their air conditioning. The dumb, dirty animal reputation turns out to be mostly a branding problem, not a biological one. And honestly, not a very fair one either, which raises the actual question underneath all this. If the cognitive gap between a pig and a dog is this small, why does one get a name tag and the other gets a menu? A social psychologist named Melanie Joy has a term for the invisible belief system that makes this feel completely normal. Carnism. Not a diet, not a personal preference, but an unexamined default, so total that most people never notice they're making a choice at all. It's not just psychology either. Which animal ends up on a plate versus on a leash has always been more historical accident than logic. Cows are sacred in parts of India and standard fare in Texas. Horses are dinner in France and unthinkable in Britain. Rabbits are pets in one house and stew in the house next door. Dogs are family in most Western homes and, in a handful of regions, still eaten. None of that lines up neatly with intelligence. It mostly lines up with whichever animal a given culture happened to domesticate first. For what job, a few thousand years ago, and which category it got sorted into before anyone alive today had a say in it. Here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, though. In 2012, researcher Brock Bastian ran an experiment where he simply reminded people that the animal on their plate could think and feel, and watched their moral concern drop, not rise. Picture the participants in that study sitting there, being told the animal on their plate can plan, remember and worry, and quietly deciding, somewhere below conscious thought, that maybe it can't do quite so much of that after all. People didn't stop eating the meat, they just quietly stopped attributing much of a mind to the animal providing it. Psychologists call this moral disengagement. And it isn't conscious deception, nobody's sitting there, scheming. It's the brain protecting itself from an uncomfortable contradiction automatically, before you've even noticed it's happening. Now, to be fair, nobody can fully climb inside a pig's head and confirm exactly what it's like to be one. That gap between observable behavior and actual inner experience is one science still can't fully close for any animal, including the ones we already love without question. But in 2012, a group of prominent neuroscientists signed something called the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, stating plainly that the neurological hardware for conscious experience isn't unique to humans. It's present, they wrote, across mammals and birds, generally. Read that twice. A room full of serious neuroscientists effectively put their names on a document that says, in careful academic language, the pigs probably have it too. Which brings us back to Hamlet and every pig like him. A mind sophisticated enough to beat a video game against a chimpanzee's odds. Sitting inside a body most people have simply agreed not to think about too hard. Nobody ever recorded whether Hamlet got his revenge on the food chain, but whoever named him after a prince, who spent an entire play stuck between thinking and acting, clearly knew exactly what joke they were making. And sometimes one actual pig makes that gap impossible to ignore. In 2012, a couple in Canada, named Steve Jenkins and Derek Walter, adopted what they were told was a teacup mini pig, small enough to fit in a bathroom sink. Her name was Esther. She was supposed to stay under 70 pounds. She hit almost 650 and kept right on growing into their living room, their routines, and eventually their entire identity as pet owners. Somewhere in the middle of raising an animal 9 times the size they'd planned for, they stopped eating meat entirely, opened an animal sanctuary, and now speak to thousands of people a year about the exact gap this video's been circling. One pig, one accidental relationship, and an entire worldview quietly rearranged around it. The line between companion and commodity has never really been about brain power in the first place. Research keeps narrowing that gap anyway, with pigs, with crows, with octopuses, and every single time it does, the old dividing line gets a little harder to defend on the old grounds. So maybe the real question isn't whether a pig is smart enough to deserve a name. Maybe it's why some animals got the name in the first place, and whether that decision was ever really about them at all. Your dog is probably on the couch again right now, waiting for you to notice it. Somewhere else, another animal, doing something remarkably similar, in a body that just happened to end up on the other side of the line, is waiting for something very different. Nobody's saying you have to feel any particular way about that, or that there's one tidy conclusion this video is supposed to hand you. Just that it's worth noticing you feel anything at all, and being a little curious about where that feeling actually came from. If questions like this stick with you, the ones that quietly rearrange something you assumed was already settled, there's a lot more of that ahead. We're not done asking what's actually going on inside these animals, or why we sorted them the way we did. Stick around because the next one might be about an animal you'd never expect.